Hi everyone, welcome to Season 5, Episode 3 of my podcast, Book and Story World with author Priya Garawal. For today's episode, I thought I would review all the most recent films I have watched approximately around June 2026. I enjoyed a film called Ghoster, which was released in 2022. The film is about a father and daughter who inherit and move into a mansion called Echoville Manor. The daughter, Elizabeth, discovers a child ghost called Ghoster who lives in the mansion. Elizabeth and her dad have to race against time as they must defeat the dragon Yato, who wants to destroy Elizabeth too, to become immortal forever. Ghoster is a fun film to watch. After playing the Ratchet and Clank video game, I had the joy of watching the animated film adaptation of Ratchet and Clank released in 2016. The film is about the Lombax Ratchet and Robot Clank meeting and both joining forces with the team called the Galactic Rangers when the world comes under threat from villains. The film adaptation is a fun, entertaining film to watch. Spin Out is another Elvis comedy film I enjoyed, which was released in 1966. In the film, Elvis plays a racing car driver who feels torn between two women. Another Elvis film I thoroughly enjoyed is the comedy Speedway. In Speedway, Elvis plays a racing car driver who gets into trouble with the IRS due to non-payment of taxes. The film also stars Nancy Sinatra, who plays an IRS agent who keeps tabs on Elvis to take his future prize money to pay his taxes. The pair become romantically involved. Along with all of the Elvis movies I have seen, Spin Out and Speedway are both light-hearted, excellent films to enjoy. An interesting film I enjoyed recently is called Good Fortune, released in 2025. In Good Fortune, Keanu Reeves plays an angel called Gabriel who tries to help a man called Arj realize the meaning of life by swapping his life with his very wealthy employer. Gabriel's magical plan backfires as Gabriel loses his wings and has to live as a human. Good Fortune is an intriguing, interesting in concept film to enjoy. An excellent film I enjoyed recently is Send Help, which was released in 2026. The film stars Rachel McAdams. The beginning of the film starts with McAdams' character Linda being shown as not very popular in the workplace. She attempts to talk to a new young boss who doesn't take to Linda. The pair end up on a plane for a work trip and are the only survivors when their plane crashes, and they both wake up on a seemingly desert island. The film is a dark satire as the pair must overcome their work and personality differences to survive on the island. The film is also branded as a survival horror film. However, watching the dynamics between the boss and worker is hilarious. Send Help is a 10 out of 10 very enjoyable film to watch. Another 10 out of 10 excellent film I enjoyed recently is Dr. Sleep, which is the sequel book and film to Stephen King's The Shining. Dr. Sleep was also written by Stephen King. Dr. Sleep is about the boy Dan from The Shining as an adult who is played by Ewan McGregor. Dan, as an adult, comes across a young girl who has supernatural powers. However, a cult known as True Knot are trying to hunt down the child called Abra, as they are vampire-like creatures who absorb the power, also known as the Shine, from children, usually to remain immortal. Dr. Sleep was an unforgettable, supernatural, excellent film to enjoy. It remained thrilling throughout. A family film I enjoyed recently is How to Build a Better Boy, released in 2014. The film is about two teenage girls who use one of their dad's military equipment to build a pretend robot boy to be the boyfriend of one of the girls. The pair start taking the robot boy to high school with themselves. How to Build a Better Boyfriend is a fun film for all ages. Another fun family film to enjoy for all ages is Invisible Sister, released in 2015. The film is about a girl called Cleo accidentally turning her popular sister Molly invisible. Debacles and hilarity ensues as Cleo must pretend to be her sister at school using a Halloween costume. The film is a lot of fun to watch. A watchable horror film I enjoyed recently is Tarot, released in 2024. The film is about a group of college friends who use a set of cursed tarot cards. The friends are then hunted down by the evil force and are killed in the way the cards foretold. Tarot is definitely worth a watch for horror fans. A comedy I enjoyed recently is The Roommate, released in 2026. The film is hilarious as a girl called Devon begins college and she becomes roommates with the spunky-seeming Celeste. At first, the girls get on fabulously. However, Celeste soon becomes a nightmare roommate by continuously breaking boundaries in the girls' friendship and shared dorm room situation. The Roommate is a fun college comedy which is very enjoyable viewing. Another film I enjoyed recently is The Call, released in 2013, which stars Halle Berry. The film is a fast-paced, suspenseful horror thriller. In the film, Halle Berry plays a 911 operator called Jordan who is haunted by a wrong decision she made during a 911 call, where a person was hiding in a house from a killer. Jordan then ends up on a 911 call with a teenage girl who has been abducted and is trapped in the boot of the kidnapper's car. Jordan tries to instruct the girl on the phone in order to rescue her. The Call is definitely worth a watch. An action comedy film I enjoyed recently is Birds of Prey and the Fantabulous Emancipation of Harley Quinn. Margot Robbie is hilarious as Harley, who has been rejected and thrown onto the streets by her romantic partner, the Joker. Harley's path then leads her to a child thief who steals and swallows a diamond owned by a crime boss. Harley then teams up with two women forming the Birds of Prey group to protect the girl. I enjoyed the adventure element of the film, which was reminiscent of 90s films. I'd say Birds of Prey is a fun, entertaining film to watch. A very intriguing and enthralling film I watched recently is The Invisible Man, released in 2020. The film is categorized as a sci-fi horror. The film is about a woman called Cecilia who flees her house to escape her abusive boyfriend. She is then told 2 weeks later that her ex-boyfriend committed suicide and is dead. Events take a strange turn as the incidences occurring around Cecilia make her believe that her ex-boyfriend Adrian is alive and has somehow turned invisible and is now tormenting her. The Invisible Man is a thrilling, exciting, enrapturing film. I'd say it is a 10 out of 10 must-watch. Another excellent horror thriller film I watched recently is Maxine, released in 2024. The film is about an adult film star called Maxine getting her big break with her first chance to star in a Hollywood film. However, as Maxine sets her sights on fame, a serial killer is striking terror by killing in Los Angeles. Maxine's dark past unravels as she has to survive being a target of the killers. Maxine is a must-watch for horror thriller fans. I finally got around to watching Disney's Moana, which was released in 2016. Moana is a magical animation about a girl called Moana who lives on an island with her family along with the rest of their community. The people of the island believe in a goddess called Te Fiti who has the power of creation. They believe that a long time ago, a demigod called Maui stole Te Fiti's heart to have the power of creation. Now the island Moana lives on is disintegrating, and Moana believes she must go on a quest to restore the heart of Te Fiti to bring life and glory back to the dying island. Moana is a 10 out of 10 fantastic magical adventure for all to enjoy. I also enjoyed Moana 2, set a few years after the events of Moana. Moana is now a chiefess to her people due to her heroic deeds in the first film. This time Moana is contacted by her ancestor who tells her that a storm god called Nalo sank an island called Motufetu, which connected the people of all the different islands together. The ancestor tells her that Moana's island will go extinct if she doesn't find a way to raise the island Motufetu. Moana 2 is another delightful magical adventure animation for all ages to enjoy. Another Disney film for all ages is Zombies, released in 2018. The film is about a town who lives in segregation, with one half of the town being human and the other half turned into zombies due to an explosion at a power plant. Both halves continue to have children. As the zombie children are transferred to human high school, the zombie boy Zed starts a friendship with a human girl called Eliza, and their friendship threatens to change the norm of humans and zombies being enemies. Zombies is a fun film to watch for all the family. Prom Pact, released in 2023, is another Disney film I recently enjoyed. The film is set in an American high school and is about a teenage girl called Mandy who gets waitlisted for Harvard. Mandy finds out that a male student in her year group's dad is a senator. She sets out to try and get closer to the senator to get a letter from him praising her so she can go to Harvard. Mandy offers to tutor the senator's son, Graham, as he is failing one of his subjects. He doesn't know that Mandy is using him to get a letter from his dad. Prom Pact is another fun Disney film to enjoy. Another great Disney animation I finally got around to watching is Encanto, released in 2021. The film is about a magical family called the Madrigals who live in a house called an Encanto. Every child and grandchild in the family is granted a magical power by a magical force. However, one child in the family called Mirabel never received a power. Mirabel has a complex about being the only non-magical member of her family, but when the magic the family has threatens to disappear, Mirabel must come to the rescue. Encanto is another magical delight of a film to watch. A watchable film I viewed recently is Empire Records, released in 1995, which stars Liv Tyler. The film is a coming-of-age film about a group of young people who work in a record store. The group of young workers strive together to raise enough money for their manager to buy the store. Empire Records is a watchable film to view. A riveting UK drama I watched recently is Vengeance Parts 1 and 2, based on true events. Vengeance is a harrowing account of a young male in a turban getting ruthlessly killed by his female friend and her other male friend as he tried to force himself on her. Vengeance is a very harrowing, discussion-provoking, intense drama to watch. A fantastic film I enjoyed with my family recently is Purple Rain, starring Prince. The film was released in 1984 and features the famous song Purple Rain. The film is about a young man who sings at a club with his band and dreams of being famous. During the young man's struggle, he faces a singing rival, a love interest, and issues regarding his parents' relationship. Purple Rain is a 10 out of 10 excellent film to thoroughly enjoy. I also extremely enjoyed a film called A Streetcar Named Desire, released in 1951, which stars Marlon Brando and Gone with the Wind's Vivien Leigh. In the film, Vivien's acting impresses again as she moves in with her sister and aggressive brother-in-law played by Brando. Vivien's character is named Blanche, who hides murky secrets in her past. The film is a 10 out of 10 as Blanche's past unravels, leading to shocking consequences. A Streetcar Named Desire is a must-watch. A more upbeat film I recently watched is romantic comedy Office Romance, released in 2026, which stars Jennifer Lopez. Lopez plays a CEO of an aviation company which has an anti-dating policy for its workers, including herself. Lopez's character Jackie breaks the rules when she starts a romance with a male lawyer who begins to work for her. Office Romance is a pleasant, light-hearted film to enjoy. A fantastic film I was bewildered by is the thriller mystery starring Keira Knightley called The Woman in Cabin 10. The film is about a journalist played by Knightley who attends a ship cruise, which means sleeping in the cabin bedrooms overnight. Knightley's character witnesses a woman going overboard during the night in the next door room to herself, Cabin 10. However, when the journalist alerts the crew and guests on board about the incident, she is told that there was no one staying in Cabin 10. The Woman in Cabin 10 is a high-impact, psychological, mind-blowing thriller which is unforgettable and is a definite 10 out of 10. After watching the film The Strangers a couple of decades ago, along with the 2018 sequel, I was blown away along with my mum by the film series The Strangers Chapter 1, 2 and 3. Myself and Mum were astounded by all three films. The Strangers Chapter 1 begins with a couple's car breaking down. The couple enter a cafe filled with the creepy residents of the town. A waitress helps point the couple to a vacant nearby cabin to stay in whilst their car gets fixed by a local mechanic. As with the original film, three strangers in masks begin terrorizing the couple. In chapters 2 and 3, the trio of murderers are intent on making sure both members of the couple are ruthlessly killed. The film series is highly suspenseful, fast-paced, mysterious, and definitely nail-bitingly scary. The film series is an unforgettable 10 out of 10 and must-watch for horror fans. I also got around to watching Aladdin live action, released in 2019. I was mesmerized by the live-action adaptation of the famous Disney cartoon Aladdin. Will Smith impressed in the role of Genie, and the magical effects in the film were awesome. Aladdin live action is a fantastic, amazing film for all the family to enjoy. Another 10 out of 10. Another fantastic children's fantasy film for all ages I recently enjoyed is The Nutcracker and the Four Realms, released in 2018, which also stars Keira Knightley. The film is about a young girl who stumbles into a magical fantasy land filled with fairies and magical creatures. In the land, the girl finds out why her deceased mum is so important to the people of the magical land, and the girl becomes involved in the battle of good versus evil in the land. The Nutcracker and the Four Realms is a fantastical, wonderful film for all the family. Another fun family musical to watch is Rodgers and Hammerstein's Cinderella, released in 1997. The film stars Brandy as Cinderella and the late Whitney Houston as the fairy godmother. The adaptation of the famous fairy tale Cinderella is definitely worth a watch, especially for children. The recent film release, Michael, released in 2026, is an impressive biopic depicting the earlier years of Michael Jackson's career, from the Jackson 5 to Michael's solo career and making famous music videos such as Thriller. Michael is a 10 out of 10 success of a film, which is enjoyable and interesting for the whole family to watch. An excellent psychological thriller I found incredible recently is The Housemaid, released in 2025. The film is about a homeless young woman who starts a job as a live-in maid for a family. However, the job role takes a strange turn when the woman's female employer becomes increasingly unhinged, whilst her husband is friendlier to the new housemaid. The film is astounding, however, for the dark, unsuspected twists and turns it takes. The Housemaid is an incredible 10 out of 10 psychological horror must-watch. Amber Alert is an intense thriller released in 2024 about a woman played by Hayden Panettiere who hails a taxi, and both herself and the taxi driver receive an Amber Alert about a missing female child who has been abducted. The pair recognize the abductor's car description and begin following him to rescue the young girl said to be in his car. The film is suspenseful, nail-biting, and even terrifying. Another 10 out of 10. An emotional romance I enjoyed recently is Voicemails for Isabel, released in 2026. The film is about a female leaving voicemails to her dead sister about her life. However, the phone number has been given to a male estate agent who starts receiving the voicemails and listening to them. The male estate agent begins to fall in love with the woman leaving the voicemail's personality from listening to the voicemails. Voicemails to Isabel is an enjoyable, pleasurable romance to enjoy. A strange horror I recently found intriguing is Cuckoo, released in 2024. The film is about a teenager from America moving in with her dad and his family in the German Alps. Gretchen's life takes a horrific turn as she sees a monster-like creature try to scare her whilst riding her bike home. The film becomes mysterious as a secret connected to Gretchen's family unravels along with the horror. Finally, I enjoyed a teen romance film titled The Last Song, released in 2010, which stars Miley Cyrus. The film is about a teen girl and brother staying with their dad over the summer. The teenage girl, played by Cyrus, begins a romance with a teenage male local. The Last Song is a pleasant teen film to watch with an emotional, unexpected ending. So that's a review of all the films I watched and enjoyed around June 2026. I hope anyone who tunes into this episode has a good time listening, and thank you to anyone who's ever tuned in to my podcast. So I hope everyone has a fabulous week. Until next Wednesday, take care everyone. Best wishes to all.